Or perhaps you find my politics a bit strong for your taste.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in Episode 7 of Andor, Announcements. This episode's title has several meanings as many characters begin to announce their true intentions. Up until now, everybody has been living a lie, and in this episode, the truth is slowly revealed. The episode begins with an announcement on the news about the Aldhani robbery.
They attacked the garrison, they'll regret it.
This is followed up with the announcement by the Imperial Security Bureau, or ISB, that they will now be enacting stricter penalties. Mon Mothma announces to her childhood friend that the life she lives is a lie, and Marrva announces to Andor that she's tired of pretending she's okay with the Empire and she is joining the rebellion. Dedra makes an announcement of her own that the ISB is ineffective at its job, and the most bitter, ironic announcement of all is, God, I forget.
You've been dragging your butt all day. You gotta shape up, buddy.
You're right, I'll come back to that later. Oh, okay. Sorry, everyone. So, the episode begins with Cyril getting ready for his job interview. As always, his mother is being overbearing and criticizing little things like his fashion choices.
The collar,
What about it?
it's high.
Now, in a symbolic way, this is his mom exerting control over Cyril's life. She's chosen a job for him, and now she's scrutinizing his clothes, because after all, the clothes do symbolize the job that a person has. Cyril is always looking down, casting his gaze away, but when he sees the announcement about Aldhani, something awakens inside of him, and he stares straight at the camera. And, by the way, he's watching the HoloNet here. That's the Imperial news feed that we've heard about from time to time in the books and comics, and in The Mandalorian, we even briefly saw a flashback of the second Death Star attack on the HoloNet. Now, normally I would say that something like a newscast is too close to our world and takes me out of the moment, like the diner in Attack of the Clones. But because this newscast is so retro, with a newscaster in a 4:3 aspect ratio and like framed as a mid-shot, for me, this works. It feels both old and new, which is the essence of Star Wars. Then the ISB announces a crackdown using some very suspect language.
Is how tight to close our fist.
And this echoes what Princess Leia says to Tarkin.
The more you tighten your grip, Tarkin, the more star systems will slip through your fingers.
And after, we see that this is exactly what Luthen wanted. He wanted the Empire to crack down, to encourage people to rebel. More on that in a bit. They announced strict penalties for systems harboring partisans, including a tribute tax. A bad idea because, as we saw in The Phantom Menace, excessive taxation of things like trade routes often lead to corrupt political change. The Imperials have announced their version of the Patriot Act called PORD, which gives the Imperial Security Bureau authority over the Army and Navy. Like everything else in this show, this does have parallels to real life, when the intelligence organization was reorganized after 9/11 and given more authority to surveil its citizens. Except in this case, it's Palpatine giving the ISB authority. And by the way, like, I'm not saying that the Empire and the US government are the same thing, just, this stuff is similar, that's all. Two totally different circumstances with, like, similar reactions. But the big Easter egg here is that this announcement's being made by Wolf Yularen. He first appeared as a background character in A New Hope right here, and later we saw him as a commander during the Clone Wars.
Tell General Skywalker to hold his departure.
And that is my favorite observation of the episode.
Hey, you seem a lot more chipper now. What's going on?
Damn good coffee.
Yeah, I guess, but there's so many coffees out there, I don't know how you picked the right one.
Doug, I love to try different coffees, but I'm no coffee expert. And that's why I like Trade, the sponsor of this video. Trade matches you with your own personal coffee selection by giving you personalized recommendations based on your own preferences. Let's face it, the grocery store selection these days is very limited. It's like 5 versions of the same brand. Trade connects you with the best local roasters that you can't find in most grocery stores. And believe me, local is way better. The coffee is roasted and shipped within 24 hours of your order, so you know it's going to be fresh.
From farm to cup.
That's right, Doug. So, for instance, they paired me with dark coffees that go well with milk. This one is called Black Velvet from Atomic Coffee Roasters. It's got hints of marshmallow, graham cracker, and malted milk balls, and it comes from Honduras. It's the kind of coffee that, well, I never would have tried on my own, but Trade is great about introducing me to new things that I learned that I love.
Well, what if you didn't like what they sent you?
Well, Doug, Trade offers a first match guarantee that you'll love the first coffee they send you. But if you don't, they ship you out a different bag for free. Our viewers get a total of $30 off your subscription plus free shipping at drinktrade.com/ScreenCrush. That's drinktrade.com/ScreenCrush for $30 off your subscription to the best coffees in the country. Back to the Easter eggs. While the ISB is cracking down on suspected rebel activity, Dedra is the only one who suspects the truth, that this is actually what the rebels wanted. She's been spending time looking for patterns in rebel behavior, so she's starting to be able to think like one of them. Or maybe she always has. Remember when she saw how the rebels operated, she said,
If I was them, This is how I do it.
Continuing the fallout from the robbery, Mon Mothma goes to see Luthen, and this visit proves that Dedra was right about the rebels' motives. Notice how they go inside because Mon Mothma's driver is an ISB agent, and she faces away from the window just in case he can read lips, while Luthen is facing the window but gives answers with double meanings with a big smile on his face.
I thought you were here to tell me about the meeting.
Now, I was really surprised that Mon Mothma did not know about this robbery.
Was this you?
What do you mean?
The garrison, Aldhani.
Then she and Luthen have a disagreement over these procedures.
Has anyone ever made a weapon that wasn't used?
Now, I find this fascinating. So like in the old extended universe of Star Wars novels, we were shown kind of a straight line. Mon Mothma was a senator who formed the rebellion. This series is showing us that Mon Mothma was just one important part of an organism with a body but no real head. Had things gone a little different, maybe someone like Luthen or Saw Gerrera would have ended up being the leader of the rebellion. It's fascinating to see the events that led up to the Rebel Alliance taking the shape that we know. Mon Mothma would have been the most temperate choice for a leader, and choosing a politician over a soldier also would have informed the direction of the New Republic after the war. For instance, Mon Mothma goes on after the war to disband the military, which allowed the First Order to rise, and for this.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Anyways, I love all this stuff. Mon Mothma says,
You told me we were building a network.
What?
and this is what we see in the show Star Wars Rebels. A small cell on Lothal slowly combines with other cells to form a coordinated rebellion. And then we see the stark contrast between her and Luthen. She's more cautious, preferring to back-channel money, to go slow. But Luthen is impatient and he wants to kickstart this rebellion like Sanaz into Dom's engine a quarter mile at a time. Now, we saw a similar dynamic play out with the Rebellion and Saw Gerrera in Rogue One, where Saw's tactics were too harsh for the organized Rebel Alliance.
His militancy has caused the Alliance a great many problems.
Oh, and right here, we see the armor won by Starkiller in the Force Unleashed games.
Oh, so are those games canon now?
No, but they are still really fun games, and that's actually what counts. And here's also another very cool Easter egg. This is the mask of one of the Jedi Temple guards. Now, I would think that this artifact would be restricted by the Empire, but maybe it's like the holocrons on the back shelf a couple of episodes ago. This is likely a copy of a Jedi artifact. Back to Cyril, who's interviewing for a Bureau standards job. Now, notice this interviewer is wearing a space necktie that is perfectly designed. It looks enough like a necktie without making us think that this takes place in our world. Cyril is obviously very bored by the prospect of this job, and you can tell how much he enjoys talking about his true passions.
I was punished for trying to uphold the law. Do my job, maintain public safety.
Which the interviewer quietly dismisses.
Probably best for everyone to just edit this a bit before signing you in.
A sign that Cyril's love for law and order will not be needed in this work. The two of them see a mouse droid, which of course we first saw in A New Hope. But this isn't just an Easter egg, this is an appropriate place for a mouse droid to show up. See, these things perform simple tasks, repairs, and message delivery for the Empire and for corporations. Basically, they're like little space interns. Tweeted Zhao on Twitter had a fun observation. Not really an Easter egg, but I love how they showed Cyril hitting rock bottom of the Empire's hierarchy by having him step aside to let a lousy mouse droid pass. First time anyone did it in Star Wars, a true humiliation. Cyril's new job is in fuel purity, and something tells me that he's going to find some incongruity, bring it to the ISB, and then he and Dedra are going to team up and eventually do this. Meanwhile, Luthen's number one, Clea, goes to a secret meeting. She arrives at a junction point that takes you to the many different levels of Coruscant. That's what this map is. It's showing all the different transfer points between the wealthy upper levels and the poor lower levels. Mr. Martoto on Twitter had a very cool observation. LH341 is overheard in the public address system, and LUH3417 was the name of the mate of THX1138 in George Lucas's first movie. Great catch. The announcer even mentions Midtown, which literally refers to the middle part of the skyscrapers. The Arabesh here reads, "Please mind the gap, doors are closing." The Arabesh here reads, "Carrier chain code from the Imperial Security Bureau." Now, a chain code is the Imperial ID system, like Social Security numbers, that we saw the Empire implement in the Bad Batch.
For individual chain code, every citizen can exchange their invalid currency for Imperial credits.
Clea is headed to a meeting with Vel, and she finds her way with these chalk markings, similar to the hobo code used during the Great Depression.
That's a pie. Means the food here is good.
Clea meets with Vel and basically says she doesn't care that everyone died, and she gives her an order.
Find him.
We can't have him walking around with Luthen in his head.
You mean kill him?
And we do get a brief cutaway to show that Seska is still alive, but an Imperial Star Destroyer has arrived on Aldhani. If I had to bet, I would say that she's the loose end that they gotta worry about. So while Clea is on a mission to tie up loose ends with Andor, we intercut with Dedra trying to unravel that same loose end, which will lead her to Andor. She interrupts this dude's nap to ask for info on stolen navigational equipment.
Why?
Well, remember that navigation device that Cassian was forced to leave behind on Ferrix? She wants to find out where and how that was stolen so she can tie it into the larger picture of rebel activity. Remember, Blevin earlier forbid her from getting that information because it was under his jurisdiction, which is why she swears this idiot to secrecy. Meanwhile, Cassian goes back to Ferrix to collect his proxy mother, Marrva, played by Aunt Petunia from Harry Potter. And Ferrix has become another site of an Imperial crackdown, a place where Imperial oppression is forcing people into rebellion, just like Luthen wanted. Then we intercut from the oppressed to the oppressors, the party of the Coruscant elite at Mon Mothma's place. I just want to say, the costumes in this scene, incredible. She meets with her childhood friend Tay Kolma, who is a prominent banker on Chandrilia, her home planet. Now, Mon Mothma was upset with how Luthen was raising funds for the rebellion, and now she is showing how she raises funds, not with robberies, but with smiles and glad-handing. So her friend says,
I'm afraid you'd find my politics a bit strong for your taste.
And notice that as Mon Mothma starts to get real with him.
I want to tell you something that only 3 people in the galaxy know about.
Right then, she leads him behind this webbed decoration, almost as if she's saying, enter my web of lies, come into this place where the Empire can't see us. It's a really cool directing choice. She goes on to say,
I've learned from Palpatine. I show you the stone in my hand, you miss the knife at your throat.
Which is very insightful. Now, she doesn't know that Palpatine is a Sith Lord, but she did watch him turn a democracy into an empire. I mean, for years, Palpatine talked like this.
I love democracy.
While he was actually planning this.
The first galactic empire!
She tells Tay,
Grand Vizier has infiltrated my Separatist coalition meetings.
And this sentence packs a few important Easter eggs. The Separatists were the planets led by Count Dooku, who broke away from the Republic during the Clone Wars. Now, in the movie Attack of the Clones, it seems like this was just a Sith Lord leading a bunch of greedy corporations, plus a Techno-Union.
The Techno-Union Army.
But the Clone Wars series revealed that the Separatists were also planets that were tired of an ineffective Republic, who were idealistic and wanted to go their own way. Even the Jedi thought this at first.
I think that Count Dooku was behind it.
He is a political idealist, not a murderer.
So now Mon Mothma's job is to work with the Separatist planets to reintegrate them into the Empire. I'm also guessing that Gorman was a Separatist planet, and that is why she was so concerned about their treatment under the Empire.
We should find some Gorman guests for tonight and see how amused they are. Your fun friends just cut off their shipping lanes yesterday.
She also mentions the Imperial Grand Vizier, whose name is Mas Amedda. Now, we saw this guy in the prequels here. He's basically Palpatine's right-hand man, running the government for him, while Palpatine quietly works on building a Sith arena in the unknown regions and cloning himself.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
But here's another cool Mas Amedda connection in this scene. Notice that Mon's place is decorated with this tree with branches and white flowers. I think this could be a tent olive tree, which is native to her home planet. Shortly after the Battle of Jakku, Mas Amedda would formally surrender the Empire to Mon Mothma underneath one of these trees on Chandrilia. Now, I love how well this show intercuts between its characters. We cut from Mon Mothma begging for money to Cassian basically begging people to take his money. He explores the aftermath of his actions on Ferrix, where Bix tells him that he got the blame for everything, and not, the guy who actually called the cops. But we also learned that he and Bix used to... Now, these Ferrix scenes are showing Andor that he cannot go home again. His actions have changed the world around him, and now he'll be forced to change with them. On the street, he has a flashback to how his father figure Clem was killed. Remember, Clem and Marrva discovered young Cassian. Here's something I missed but I found all over the internet. The troopers here are actually clones, wearing Phase 2 clone armor that we see in Revenge of the Sith.
But I thought all the stormtroopers are regular people, not clones.
Well, they are, but the Empire would have slowly phased out the clones like we saw in the Bad Batch.
These are our replacements.
After some of the crowd shouted, now people in the crowd are not happy with the Republic turning into the Empire. So Clem tried to calm them down, and it led to his own execution on this same spot. And also they hanged him, just like the Sith Inquisitors hanged the Jedi on Tatooine in the show Obi-Wan. Following up on this, we see the positive domino effect of Luthen's raid. Marrva is going to rebel, and she's not afraid to walk down the street anymore.
And I walked across the square with a smile on my face.
Now Cassian argues with her, saying,
well, we'll find a place they haven't ruined yet.
Which, as he finds out at the end of the episode, that place does not exist. God, this show is so well written. So he says,
I'll be worried about you all the time.
And her reply is so human.
That's just love.
God, right up there with this.
But what is grief? If not love, persevering.
Back to the ISB meeting where Qyburn mentions a planet.
Very well, let's have a full audit of all hyperspace lanes leading to Ord Mantell on my desk by this time tomorrow.
Where Han Solo narrowly avoided trouble between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back.
Well, the bounty hunter we ran into in Ord Mantell changed my mind.
This planet's also the headquarters for the Black Sun crime syndicate, which we briefly saw Darth Maul take over during the Clone Wars. These ISB meetings reminded me a lot of the majors reporting to the brass in the brilliant TV show The Wire.
Is your deputy major present?
Yes, sir.
You now command the Eastern District.
And just as we're seeing the behind-the-scenes politics of the rebellion, we're also seeing the inner workings of the Empire. Novels like the New Thrawn trilogy show us how the Empire's progress was stymied by the ambition of its officers, and we see that play out here. Blevin is trying to use Dedra's initiative as a weapon against her, and she counters with this.
Do you really think the rebels care about the lines we draw on maps?
You think the relevance of my work has been supplanted?
This is why I was thinking about the government's response to 9/11 earlier. After the attacks, the Bush administration removed much of the red tape that kept the CIA, FBI, and NSA from communicating with one another, like what Dedra is proposing here. And now she's been given the Ferrix sector, which will put her right on the hunt for Andor. And finally, we see Andor pay the price for his lack of ambition as we go to Neamos, otherwise known as Space Miami, but in January. Now he's going by the name Keith and is fretting over a grocery list.
Don't forget the pizzos.
We out of pizzas?
Again, this seems inspired by a scene in The Wire, where Omar tries to get out of the game by hiding out in Central America.
Yo, Naldo, cuz got to find out where they got Honey Nut, yo. They expect us to call this spittle land home.
Outside, he sees Imperial probe droids like we first saw in Imperial Strikes Back, and they even make the same sounds. And then he has a run-in with a shore trooper who we first saw in Rogue One. And speaking of Rogue One cameos, we see a couple of KX droids like K2SO.
Why does she get a blaster and I don't?
Now, K2 is a reprogrammed Imperial droid, so maybe it's possible that Cassian escapes the prison by appropriating one of these droids to help him escape. Kevin Fernandez even theorized that Andor would reprogram him with Nemik's journal, which is why they both had an affinity for the word
climb.
Climb! The shore trooper tells the droid to hang Cassian, which he takes literally, showing how careless the Empire is with their citizens' lives. And then, the courtroom scene. I love how this room is cooled with just a fan, like it's some kind of southern courtroom from a movie. But notice that the fan does bear an Imperial crest. The first charges we hear are...
Charges. Loitering at the scene of a crime, walking an unleashed mastiff.
Unleashed Mastiffs refers to these lizard dogs that we've seen the Tusken Raiders use in Attack of the Clones, The Mandalorian, and the Book of Boba Fett. And this judge is just casually eating nuts while sentencing people into basically slave labor. They use what's basically an old credit card machine to issue the sentences, and here's something interesting. So the Arabesh writing on these cards are either a continuity mistake of the filmmakers or a mistake of the court system. The first card reads, name, Richard Stevenson, crime, failure to follow Imperial command, anti-Imperial vandalism, sentence 5 years. And that has nothing to do with an Unleashed Massive. And Cassian's sentencing card reads, name, Keith Seymour, crime, suspected force sensitivity, assaulting an Imperial officer, sentence 25 years. Now, not only does this not match up with Cassian's sentence, but Keith Seymour is the concept artist who worked on this show, Wonder Woman, and a bunch of other stuff. So look, Keith Seymour, for one thing, if you were suspected of force sensitivity, then you wouldn't get 25 years, you would get taken to Fortress Inquisitorius and imprisoned by the Sith Inquisitors. So let's just start there. And second, you thought that we wouldn't read the Arabesh, but we did. So now we have to assume that Cassian's sentencing of 6 years was some kind of error, or they were just cutting to cards from different cases. Oh, and that is the announcement that I forgot to mention earlier, Cassian's announcement of a 6-year prison sentence. It's bitterly ironic that Cassian's sentence should have been 6 months, but thanks to his success on Aldhani, now he's got 6 years and he's lost his entire cut of the take. And just as Andor is given his sentence, so is Cyril. He is condemned to live his life in a cubicle, one of hundreds of identical drones, not doing anything exceptional with his life. Oh god, that is damn good coffee. Thanks again, Trade, for sponsoring our little video here, and click our link in the description to get your free coffee today. But I want to hear from you guys. What Easter eggs did you find? Let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe or smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.